Welcome, everybody. Mike Brenner, SBR Videos. You know, March Madness just finished up. We got NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, and guess what? I'm talking today with Ross Benjamin, and we're going to break down the NFL. That's right. The first week lines for regular season are out, and also the strength of schedules for the teams is out. So I'm going to talk with Ross, and we're going to break down the strength of schedule and then go over some of the intriguing matchups for week one. With that being said, Ross, glad to have you back with me. I thought we would catch a break after March Madness, but apparently not so. And I guess it's never too early to talk about getting an edge on beating the book. So what do you think about the strength of schedule for the NFL season that's come out?
Well, Mike, it's never too early to talk about the NFL. That's true. But, realistically, you can't put a lot of stock in our assessments right at this particular time, although we're much more educated than most of the rest. Having said that, let's get into these strength of schedules. So the New York Jets have a brutal schedule coming up this year. I mean, you're looking at they're facing 10 teams that had 8 wins or more a season ago. And the teams they're facing, the cumulative number of all 16 teams was a plus 365 points a season ago. So they're going to have their work cut out for them, especially in light of the fact that they have a unsettling quarterback situation as we speak. If you're looking for teams like San Francisco and St. Louis to improve, you better look elsewhere. I mean, San Francisco, especially, the opponents that they're facing, their 16 opponents were plus 590 point differential a season ago. St. Louis plus 4089. I know that Miami made a lot of changes during the offseason that a lot of people think will improve their chances this year. But again, they're playing 16 opponents this year that were a plus 425 point total differential a season ago. On the other side of the coin, I look at the teams that have played opponents that won 7 or 6 games or less a season ago. And, you're looking at Washington, Dallas, and the Giants fit into that category of playing 6 teams with 8 wins or more. And you can't put a lot of stock in that, Mike, because the NFC East was a very weak division a season ago, and these teams face each other 6 times. And then you look at the NFC Central, they're going to be facing teams that won 7 or more games, 8 or more games on 7 separate occasions this season. So, you can't put a lot of stock in that, in my opinion. I do look at the point total differential. A team you might look at for improvement this year is the Tennessee Titans. I mean, they're going to have a stockpile of draft picks, especially after that blockbuster trade with the Rams giving away their number 1 overall pick and having 6 picks, I believe, in the first 87 in the draft, Mike. On top of that, the opponents they're facing this year were minus 412 point total differential a season ago. Jacksonville Jaguars, another team that I could see improving this year, and their strength of schedule. You're looking at 16 teams that went minus 386 point total differential a season ago, and then playoff teams like Kansas City and Minnesota from a year ago. They're also facing fairly easy schedules, with all being taken into consideration. So those are the teams I'm looking at as far as strength of schedule goes, Mike. And it's, again, way too early. But by the same token, it's fun to discuss these types of subjects.
Yes, it is, Ross. And I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on the Packers' strength of schedule? What I saw is that was ranked number 32 in the league. Any thoughts on the Packers? And, are they possibly getting an easier schedule than usual?
Well, I mean, I think that goes hand in hand with the whole NFC Central, Mike. And for whatever reason, I mean, it's not like the NFC Central was a bad division a season ago. Chicago and Detroit brung up the rear, but they were definitely not pushovers week in and week out. And, Green Bay and Minnesota were both playoff teams a season ago. So what I'm drawing from that, Mike, is their non-conference slate and their teams they play outside of division weren't very strong a season ago. And I think that goes hand in hand with Green Bay's strength of schedule.
Yeah, and each year I look into the strength of schedules. I mean, I don't put a whole lot of credence into it because rosters change, everything else, but I do look at it because it is important and it factors in. But what also excites me is when they release the regular season lines, and there's some very intriguing games. So if we can, let's talk about a few of these games, and I wanted to get your insight on them. First and foremost, Broncos opening up with the first game of the year against obviously Carolina Panthers. The first game of the season each year for the last 12 years, the home team has won 8, lost 2, and tied 2. What are your thoughts on the Broncos, and will they be able to shut down the Panthers again in week 1?
Well, the numbers don't lie. That's certainly the case. But, this is a little bit of an exception to the rule. And in my opinion, we're looking at a Denver team. We don't even know who the quarterback's going to be right now, Mike. They've tried to make several trades. They failed to get Colin Kaepernick because they couldn't get to an agreement on his contract in a trade with San Francisco. They've reached out to Buffalo about Tyrod Taylor on several occasions. They tried to sign Taylor last year in free agency, but he opted to go with Buffalo at that time. And then you're looking at their potential starting quarterback being Mark Sanchez after Brock Osweiler signed elsewhere in free agency and says, you know what, shame on you guys for not playing me at the end of the year. So then Carolina playing with revenge. They got absolutely embarrassed in the Super Bowl a season ago, as you well know, Mike. So that's a very intriguing matchup, no doubt about it.
There's one particular game that really sticks its head out for me, and it's the Colts -5 against the Lions. The Lions really are going to dismantle a lot of their starting lineup on defense and offense. I think the Colts are going to be, very focused this year. Andrew Luck is really looking for a bounce back year. That's just one game I think really sticks its head out with value. Any thoughts on the Colts? And also another one is Seattle -7 against the Dolphins team that's also looking for some answers.
Well, as far as the Colts go, it's all going to hinge on Andrew Luck. Is he going to be healthy? I mean, he spent most of last year injured or playing injured, and when he was on the field, he had his worst year of his young career. So that and again, Indianapolis, a lot of holes defensively, Mike. They need to clean up. So I'm not as enamored with the Colts as you are, with all due respect, but that's okay. Difference of opinion is no problem here. And let's look at that Seattle game you mentioned in their opener. Seattle at home, anytime Seattle plays at home, they're definitely, you're not going to fade them in any stretch of the imagination as this short of a favorite besides. So I would say that, I would be hard pressed at this juncture to go against Seattle at this particular time.
Yeah, and I think that is accurate because, obviously the Dolphins going through a coaching change, and when that happens, a lot of other changes come with it. Seattle is pretty much intact, and I think they're focused and they're ready for this upcoming season. So I think that's going to be a very interesting week 1 bet, and I'm anxious to see how the line will adjust from now, obviously, till kickoff. There's one other one, Ross, the Cardinals taking on the Patriots. That ought to be a very interesting week 1 matchup. Any thoughts on that? And do the Cardinals kind of gather more momentum this season, or do they go backwards feeling like they maybe failed last year?
I'm glad you brought that match up because this is one of the 3 intriguing matchups that I was looking at heading into the show today. You got an Arizona team that won 13 or 14 games a season ago, Mike. Whatever the case may be, that always bodes well when a team is a pick'em or underdog of 2 or less in their opener. They've gone 12-4 straight up in ATS since 1980 as a home pick or underdog of 2 or less if they won 9 games or more the season before. And Arizona qualifies in that regard, as well as the New York Jets as a +1 underdog against Cincinnati. Those are 2 very intriguing matchups to start the season, as far as I'm concerned. Arizona has a history too, Mike. It hasn't come up very much in the last couple of years because of their success, but they've been a terrific home underdog over the last 7 to 8 years. And they're not a home underdog per se, but they're a pick 'em, and they're very seldom in that situation the last few years. All due respect to New England, they made a lot of nice additions with tight end Martellus Bennett. They signed former wide receiver to Buffalo Bills Chris Hogan, who's an underrated receiver that I think is right in the mold of Julian Edelman and help me out here, Mike, the other possession wide receiver. They have Danny Amendola. So I think that this is an intriguing matchup as well.
Yeah, and I like that also because, the Patriots, they're not going to start this season, especially Tom Brady, like last year with that chip on his shoulder because of that lawsuit he had with the NFL. So I think this year they might start maybe a little lackadaisical. Don't know, but Cardinals, I don't think they're happy with their performance in the playoffs, obviously, so I think they might come out on fire. And when you just laid those numbers on me over the last 7 years, that's very intriguing as well. Okay, well, before we wrap it up, Ross, is there any other games that grab your attention for week one or anything else that you want to add?
The only other one, excuse me, Mike, the only other one that I would like to mention is the Jacksonville Jaguars Green Bay Packers game. You had mentioned Green Bay, and I thought that was very astute observation on your part. And part of their strength of schedule weakness is attributed to playing teams like Jacksonville and teams from the AFC South, which was just a horrible division a season ago. However, you look at where the lines makers set this line initially. Jacksonville is just a 4-point dog at home. I mean, I know they're on their home field, but I would think that in years past, the last few years anyway, you'd be looking at Jacksonville as a 7 to 8 point home underdog in this situation, and they have them at 4. So, I mean, I think that the lines makers are telling you here they fully expect Jacksonville to be a much improved team going into this season. It's certainly a game to keep an eye on, and it's certainly a line to keep an eye on as the months progress towards September.
Well, viewers, you heard it, and I like the insight from Ross Benjamin. We're getting in early on the NFL season. We're going to try to find that edge. With that being said, make sure you check Ross's articles daily for all of our sports. He writes some great articles and gets some very, very good picks, and I'm looking forward to working with him throughout the NFL season. Okay, Ross, thanks for your time today. I look forward to you and I going through the NFL season together, beating the book on a weekly basis. Have a great day, my friend.